look into almost any classroom, you find all of the varieties of strength and talent and weakness and fear and doubt and aspiration that we can find anywhere. Students from different language groups, different cultures represented. And to look at that variety and assume that it would be best taught in only one way seems to fly in the face of logic. Seems much more logical and much richer to develop a diversity of ways to teach the diversity of students in the classroom. A tiered assignment is an instructional strategy in which all students work toward common learning goals, but tasks are at different degrees of difficulty to address students' readiness needs. A teacher would use a tiered assignment anytime there's a readiness span in a classroom in regard to whatever the knowledge, understanding, and skill is that's important for students to learn at that particular point.
In this program, University of Virginia Professor Carol Tomlinson helps us examine tiered assignments as a strategy for differentiating instruction at any grade level. We'll visit Betsy Brown's third grade class to see how she uses this strategy in her classroom. In today's activity, all the students will make a clock, but then they'll work on telling time, tiered at different levels of difficulty.
I have a wide variety of students, and I've gotten to know these students pretty well. I have a few students that are identified learning disabled. I have a few students that are very high achievers, but they have great personalities and they all work hard and they are all eager to learn. They're just regular, wild and crazy kids.
Anytime there's a readiness spread in the classroom, tiering is a very good option. In a tiered assignment, a teacher chooses important learning outcomes and creates multiple versions of a task that will achieve those outcomes, but the tasks are at various levels of difficulty or complexity. The goal of a tiered assignment is to have each student work with a task that's a little bit too hard for that student, because what we know is that a student learns only when a task is a little too hard for him or her, and there's a support system to move the student through the difficulty to success. So in a classroom where students inevitably differ in readiness for any particular task, while the teacher has to maintain common learning outcomes, the degree of difficulty or complexity of the task should be a match for students' particular needs.
We've been learning about time, haven't we, for the past couple of days? Okay. My students come in with a wide variety of reading levels. I have some that are reading on a pre-primer 3. I have some students that are reading at a 5th grade level. I have some students that are a year behind in math. I have some students that are right on target for math, and I have some students that are a year ahead. So I have a wide variety of students with a wide variety of interests. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to write all the reasons why you think time is important. Okay? And we're going to share them together. I gave them a quick journal brainstorming activity, and I only gave them a few minutes to do this. I wasn't really judging their writing during this time, but I just wanted to get their brain working and kind of thinking about the concepts involved in time and why we even need to learn this skill. We began our time math unit last week. We've been practicing how to read times on a clock in numbers and in words. We've talked about what a half of an hour is, what a quarter of an hour is. And we also did an activity where we studied elapsed time. We've done numerous activities to practice how to read a calendar and how to make schedules. I would like for my students, after today's activity, to be able to know and understand that time is an organizer and helps us organize our daily activities. I also want them to be able to read a clock, My ultimate goal for all of them, and the goal that we're all trying to reach, is for them to be able to read a time to the minute. Okay. Finish the one thought that you're on. Okay, who would like to share their reasons that they think time is important? Daniel E.
Time is important to keep track of your stuff like you have to do, like a meeting or something.
Okay. Jesse.
Time is important because it will tell us when to get up and go to bed.
Oh, good. Okay, important things. We need to know when to go to sleep and when to wake up, right? Raise your hand if you're a grouch if you don't get enough sleep. Me too. Me too. I'm very grouchy if I don't get enough sleep. So a clock and time, knowing how to tell time, tells me when to go to sleep and when to wake up. Good. Tyler, why do you think you need to know time? What?
Because, like, if you gotta go to the store, gotta do something, you don't want to be late.
Right. Brianna?
Time is important because you may want to go somewhere at a certain time.
Great.
I think time is important so you can go to work on time.
Great. What do you all think would happen if you didn't know how to tell time? Would you be very organized if you didn't know where you were supposed to be and when you were supposed to be there? No, you sure wouldn't. Okay? So time is a good thing to know because it helps us organize our lives, right? Okay, well, since your brains are working now, okay, I thought we would do an activity called Time to Eat. And now, I would like for these people, when I say go, to move to this group. Initially, when I started teaching and using tiered assignments, I would get really frustrated because the kids wouldn't move from group to group like I wanted them to, and didn't work well in groups like I wanted them to. So we actually do take class time in the beginning to practice moving from one place to another place in the room. All right, haven't said go yet. Okay, let's see how well we can do this. On the count of 3. The rules and the expectations for working together in groups are just that they have to be kind to each other. They have to use their time wisely. They have to use all of the resources within their groups before they need help from me. And they just have to use appropriate voice levels and behavior during the group time. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass out the materials that you are going to need to make your clock. Think about what's inside the bag and think of how you would be able to use those pieces to make a clock. And then I had the students begin their time to eat activity. The kids had to make a clock using food. You guys may go ahead and empty your bags of candy onto your burrito. I decided to use the food to build the clocks because my students really enjoy food, and that kind of hooks them in to learning the skills that they need to learn. Can anybody tell me what they think that the burrito, what is that?
It's the face of the clock.
The face of the clock. Good. Any guesses on what the 2 pieces of licorice are? Let's see, Evan.
The minute hand and the hour hand.
Good job. Raise your hand if you can tell me what the M&Ms stand for. Jennifer.
The numbers for the clock.
The numbers for the clock. And look, does anybody notice any differences? They've got some kind of M&Ms there. Look at your M&Ms. Dalton.
The big ones are for the 5 minutes.
The big ones are for the 5-minute intervals, you think? And what about the small ones?
The small ones are for the minutes.
Can anyone tell me then, without counting them, how many total M&Ms should you have? We've got enough M&Ms to fill up a whole hour. Matthew?
60.
We should have 60 M&Ms, right? Because there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. Very nice. Okay, now what I would like for you to do is take your candy and try to kind of space it out like a clock. Okay, you'll want to put your big M&Ms for the big numbers on our clock, and you'll want to put your small M&Ms will kind of stand for the little dashes. So Dalton's right. You have a big M&M, then 4 small M&Ms. Big M&M, then 4 small M&Ms. Okay. How are you guys doing? When I'm planning a unit, I try to think of the major concepts and big understandings and big ideas that I want the students to come away from that unit with. I also take the state standards into consideration. I take my students' interest levels into consideration. I take their readiness levels into consideration. I also consider the skills that the students need to develop.
To design a tiered activity, a teacher pre-assesses students to see where they are in regard to predetermined learning outcomes. Then looks at the spread of student readiness within the class in reference to those particular learning outcomes. Then a teacher will develop one particular task. If I were going to have all of the class do one task to achieve these learning goals, what would that be? Check the task to make sure the task is tight, that it's written in such a way that students who do that task are highly likely to achieve those goals. And then look at the assessment results. Are there some students for whom this task is so demanding that they will work in a state of frustration? Are there other students who could almost do this task but need a little bit more support? Are there some students who could move a bit beyond the baseline task if support were given to them? Are there some students whose knowledge, understanding, and skill is so great that in working on these goals, they ought to work at very high levels of complexity or abstractness? Whether we elect to develop 2 versions of the task, 3, 4, 5, what we're doing is starting with a tight baseline task that clearly addresses prescribed knowledge, understanding, and skill. And then to tier it, we develop multiple versions of that task at different levels of complexity.
I determine my students' readiness levels by giving them a multiple choice pretest where I measured the 5 components of time that they are responsible for knowing. Those included estimating time, knowing how long lunch is. Is it closer to 30 minutes or 3 hours? Reading time to the nearest minute, using a calendar, and elapsed time. And it was interesting because the groups came out differently for each component of the pretest. So my groups within this time unit today on telling time and reading time on the clock will even be flexible, and will have to be tiered a different way when we're studying elapsed time or the calendar. So I really use my pretests to help me plan my tiered activities. So I assign them to groups.
A teacher might pre-assess students with a quiz, with journal prompts, with exit cards, with oral responses, any number of ways to determine the level of sophistication of students' knowledge, understanding, and skill.
When I'm planning a tiered lesson, I start with the top tier because it is the benchmark that I will expect all students to eventually reach. And then I plan my other tiers with appropriate scaffolding. When I plan tiers this way, I'm challenging all of my students. The reason I decided to use a tiered assignment today is because during the pre-testing, and actually from informal assessments that I've done and asking them what time it is at certain times in the day, I realized that I had 3 very distinct groups. The blue group working on time to the minute, my pink group working on time to the 5-minute interval, and my white group working on time to the quarter hour and half hour. The colors actually have no meaning. It just depends on what color of paper I can find. And let's do this. Yes, sorry. Today's lesson was a perfect example of having to adjust on the spot because I noticed that the whole class was having trouble in building the clock. I had thought that it would be easier than it was. I noticed that they needed the numbers. So I quickly grabbed some sticky notes. What you're going to do is you're going to take your burrito, okay? And I want you to write, starting with 12, numbers. And I want you to stick them outside of your burrito. Okay, and then you're going to need to fill in all in between. 12 could go here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Today's lesson was altered again. Mark's group, Artavis's group. I would like for you guys to only take your big M&Ms, and I want you to put each of those at a number. You can take all of the rest of your M&Ms, and what you're going to do is put the candy back into your baggie. And so we just froze, and I modeled for them. And once I did that, that seemed to get the students rolling in the right direction. Okay? Now, I have a whole new respect for clockmakers. Do you guys? Yeah. All righty. Okay. What you're going to do now for the activity, since we took our time, each of you guys have an activity card. Okay? I'm going to read it out loud. Okay? But once you get it in your group, I want you to read it again. Okay? To make sure that you can follow the directions the right way. Time to eat. Okay, the first thing, number 1, build your clock using the burrito and candy. My third graders are really good using the task cards. So usually if they're working on 3 different activities, I'll make 3 different task cards. Then number 2, you need to choose one student to be the teacher first. Okay? Keep in mind that everyone in the group will get to be the teacher at least one time. All right? Then when the teacher goes, the teacher chooses a time slip. So let's say if Artavis is the teacher for this group first. He's going to choose a time slip here. And he's going to read it to his group.
15 minutes after 8.
15 minutes after 8. Good. And guess what the students in the group are going to do? They're going to make their hands say 15 minutes after 8. Can you guys do that for me?
In giving directions for the actual tiered task itself, there may be some common elements that all students would share, and in that case, giving directions to the entire class for the common elements makes sense. If tasks vary greatly from one another, it's probably not sensible to try to explain 2 or 3 or 4 sets of tasks to the class as a whole. So the teacher might have clear instructions written for each task separately, and when students learn the color, the letter of the group they're in, or the geographic part of the room where they should go, they'll find directions written when they get there. It's certainly possible for a teacher to tape record directions. It's possible for a teacher to share the directions with one student in each group, and in turn have that student share the directions with the others who join him or her in the group. It's possible for the teacher to meet with students the day prior to the task in small groups to explain it, so the directions are given prior to the actual distribution of students to the task. About the only thing that you don't want to do is to give multiple sets of directions in a way that confuses students and uses an undue amount of time.
So that's number 4. And then number 5 is the teacher will walk around the group and check each time. Then the teacher will help the students correct their time if needed. Okay, number 6 says repeat the steps above. This time let another group member have a turn being the teacher. Okay, so you're going to keep doing it until everybody gets a turn.
Yes, ma'am.
Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, I put something extra in there. It says if your group finishes early, repeat the steps above, but this time, whoever's the teacher gets to make up a time. Like I could say, show me 6:15. Okay, I would just think of it out of my head instead of getting it out of the bag. Do you guys understand what you're supposed to do if you finish early?
Yeah.
Yes? Are we sure?
Yeah.
Okay, alrighty. Tyler, can you be the first teacher in this group? Here's your activity card and here's your time slips. Today, even though the students were all working on the same activity, I still used the task cards just to remind them what they were supposed to be doing. I also color-coded the task cards, as I always do, to help me keep track of who's doing what. And it's just a really good organization for tiered lessons.
Tiering probably works best when we think of it as degrees of mental complexity. And what that may mean is that some students need more scaffolding, some students need less scaffolding. Some students need a task that is very, very structured. For some students, the structure can begin to drop off and more openness can be achieved. Some students will work best with very concrete illustrations. Others can move more toward abstractness. Tiering really has to do with the complexity of thought, not the kind of thought and not the quantity of thought.
All of the tiers in today's lesson did address the same learning goal. Where the tiering came in was their time slips that they were reading off of had different times. The blue group is my group that is the closest to the benchmark of telling time to the nearest minute. My pink group is the group that hasn't quite shown me that they're there yet, and they were working on time to the 5-minute interval today.
9:20.
My group that is furthest from the benchmark, my white group, was working on time to the quarter hour and half hour.
A quarter after 2.
The tiered assignments and using the task cards, especially with the tiered assignments, have also given the children kind of a level of independence and has made them responsible for their learning instead of me being responsible for their learning. And when the students are responsible for their learning, they learn and retain more and achieve more.
A quarter to 10.
As the students are working, I'm trying to walk around and just informally assess whether they have the skill that we happen to be working on that day. And put on minutes. Students in the blue group and in the pink group seem to really be able to demonstrate the skill that we were working on today.
35 minutes after 3.
All right, let's see. Brianna, did you have enough room on your end? They'll still have flavor.
Right. That's how mine's gonna be. I can't stick it on here. Last time I did it fell.
I noticed that my pink group really had the time to the 5-minute interval and seemed to reach that goal I had set for them. So next lesson we will work on telling time to the minute.
31 after 10. You got 9:23. 10. 31. Good.
My blue group today seemed to have time to the minute really well and have reached that goal. So the blue group will be working on elapsed time next.
Good.
One value of differentiating instruction is that when students work on tasks that are appropriate for them, the teacher has time to work with individuals in small groups. If each child who has a question about a task immediately goes to the teacher for an answer, then suddenly that time has been used for something other than that which the teacher hoped it would help with. So it's very important in a differentiated classroom when working on tiered assignments or other tasks that students have a mechanism for getting their questions answered other than going directly to the teacher.
It's very helpful to have an expert in each group where the students can go first before they come to me. So that gives me time to roam between all three groups.
42 minutes after 4.
What time did you have, Jenny? Hang on a second.
5:45.
You had 5:45. Okay, and what time is that in numbers? Remember, it's almost 6 o'clock. Can you show me 5:45 on your clock? A 5:45, so it's almost 6 o'clock. Remember, this is a quarter after. What was 1:45? This would be 15 minutes until 6. Is that 5:45?
No.
What do you guys think?
Yes. Yes?
You guys don't sound too sure about it.
No.
Remember, we took our clock? Look at our clock up here. I realized that the white group was having trouble telling time to the quarter hour, especially a quarter till the next hour. So as I walked by that group, I tried to adjust their lesson a little bit and gave them a few problems where they were having to show me a quarter till another hour and a quarter till another hour. So they got a little bit of a practice. But it did show me that I do need to go back with that group and work on it even more than I had planned. And then, what did we say when our minute hand was pointing down here? Well, we said 6:30, or we said, you could say
60 minutes, 30 minutes after 6.
good. Or what's the other way that we said it? Half, remember?
Half past 6.
Half past, okay. And then we said when it moves up here, it's what? It's 15 minutes until 6. And we said another way to say that is a
1 minute,
No.
quarter to 6.
5:45, right. Does that make sense? And eventually they will move up to telling time to the 5-minute intervals, and then they will move up to telling time to the minute. Sure is. Good job. Okay. I think it's Daniel's turn. I would say the main benefit in using a tiered assignment is that all of the students are being appropriately challenged, and that all the students are going to meet the benchmark, and that they won't get frustrated along the way, because if support is needed, I will give them support. If acceleration is needed, I will give them that. Sean, did you guys finish blue group? White group, did you guys finish?
Yeah.
Pink group, did you guys finish?
Yes.
Alrighty, I want you to stretch your hand up in the air. And I want you to pat yourself on the back. Okay, now I want you to give me all of your candy. I'm just kidding. You may eat your candy now. Well, thank you guys for working so hard. The only thing that surprised me and that I wasn't prepared for and that I felt didn't go as well as I had envisioned it was the making of the clocks. I felt that the tasks that I had assigned each group were appropriate, and I was comfortable with their level of understanding of those skills. To check for accuracy and understanding, I'll give them an independent activity to complete tomorrow. Need you guys to freeze. In 1 minute, we're going to clean up, and then we're going to play another time activity. When I started planning tiered assignments, at first I made the mistake of trying to do them all the time, every day, with everything. And I just wasn't ready for that yet. And so then I slowed down and I set a goal of doing 1 lesson per grading period. And then it was nice because then the next year I used those just with a little bit of tweaking and then added more. Now it's become almost automatic. It's very easy to do once you understand it and practice it. The next thing that we're going to do is a card game called Memory. Okay, we've played this a lot. Do you all remember?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Remember, you take all of your cards and you flip them over so that you just see the blank side?
The blank side, then you flip them over. See, can you get a match?
Right. Do you need to pay attention when your partner is flipping over cards?
Yes.
Yes. But this time, it's going to be cards that have the time written in words. Remember, we've been practicing that, the time written in words? And then it's going to have a matching card that has the time drawn on a clock. Okay? So you need to find the match. Okay, the time with the words and then the time that's written on the clock. Okay? I'm going to let you do this with partners.
As the students work with their concentration task, we can see a second example of tiering.
What I say? It's 1:30. Oh, wow. It is 5:45. Nope.
All of the students are able to work with a particularly inviting task of a concentration game. But students are working again at half or quarter hour intervals, 5-minute intervals, or 1-minute intervals. So while the task focuses on the same skill of time telling, and while the task is equally appealing to all kids, they are working at a degree of complexity or difficulty that matches their particular readiness at this moment.
The benefits to a teacher in using tiered assignment is, I would say, a decrease in behavior problems, an increase in students that are on task, especially an increase in student achievement.
Got it.
I need you to freeze. Okay. I need you to make sure that all of your cards get back in your bag, because I know we didn't finish playing, and I'll put them over in our math area. So if you have extra time at some point, okay, later, you can play concentration with a buddy. Okay, or you could either just try to do a match by yourself. Yes. Okay. Let's see if we can do that by the time I get to 0. 5. We'll follow up today's lesson by practicing reading clocks and kind of review reading clocks. And then we'll move on from reading a clock to work on using a calendar.
At the end of a tiered assignment, closure is important. And it's not difficult at all to do because the learning goals for students are essentially the same. There are many, many ways to bring closure, but the important part is that the teacher articulates very carefully for students where it is they have arrived and is able to help them clarify, share, kind of tie a ribbon around the package so that they have a sense of being finished, but also a sense that they have shared a common endeavor, even though they may have arrived there in different ways.
Think about what we've been studying, okay? Just to kind of wrap up what we've done today. I want to see if your brains are still working or if we used them all up today, okay? Can anybody tell me how we would say this time in words?
30 minutes after 12.
You could say 30 minutes after 12, or what else did we say the other day?
30 minutes till 1.
Well, you could say 30 minutes until 1. That's good. All right. Another way. Give me another way.
12:30.
Half past. Right. Half past. Good. Let's see. You tell me what time this is.
7:05.
7:05. Good. And let me see. Somebody from the blue group, I think it was. The blue group, see if their brains are still working. And this might be harder to see. Let's see. All right, Brianna.
12:32.
All righty. You guys did a really good job today. Good job.